You know that feeling. It hits you late at night when the house is quiet, or maybe on a Sunday evening when the distraction of the weekend fades away. It is a subtle, gnawing sense that something is off. You have the job, you have the apartment, you have the smartphone with infinite entertainment, yet you feel strangely hollow. You are anxious about the future and nostalgic for a past that probably was not as good as you remember. You tell yourself that once you get that promotion, once you find that partner, or once you hit that savings goal, then you will finally relax. But you never do. You are running on a treadmill, chasing a horizon that moves away from you with every step. Welcome to the human condition. We often think we are the pilots of our own lives, making rational choices and seeking happiness. But what if I told you that is a lie? What if I told you that your brain is not designed to make you happy? In fact, it is designed to keep you in a state of low-grade dissatisfaction. Today, we are going to dive into a concept that merges ancient wisdom with cutting-edge science. We are looking at the book Why Buddhism is True by Robert Wright. Now, before you scroll away, let me clarify something. This is not about converting you to a religion. We are not talking about reincarnation or supernatural deities. Robert Wright is an evolutionary psychologist, a man of science. He argues that Buddhism, at its core, was never really about religion. It was an ancient attempt to hack the human mind. And now, modern psychology is finally catching up to prove that the ancients were right about the source of our suffering. To understand this, we have to look at one of the most culturally significant metaphors of our time, the Matrix. Remember the scene where Morpheus meets Neo. Neo is just a regular guy, an office drone living a mundane life. Morpheus tells him that the world he sees is an illusion, a construct designed to blind him from the truth. He offers him a choice. Take the blue pill, wake up in your bed, and believe whatever you want to believe. Or take the red pill, stay in Wonderland, and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Neo takes the red pill. He wakes up to find the terrifying reality that he is just a battery, a power source for the machines. His entire life, his job, his noodles, his memories, was just a simulation fed into his brain. Robert Wright argues that we are all Neo. We are not plugged into machines, but we are enslaved by an algorithm just as powerful. It is called natural selection. You see, we assume our brain's job is to show us the truth. We assume our eyes act like cameras and our ears like microphones, recording the world objectively. That is false. Your brain has one function, and one function only, to get your genes into the next generation. That is it. Natural selection does not care if you are happy. It does not care if you see the truth. It only cares that you survive long enough to reproduce and keep your offspring alive. To do this, your brain has to delude you. It has to incentivize you. Think about the last time you bought something you really wanted. Maybe it was the newest iPhone or a pair of expensive sneakers. You obsessed over it. You imagined how great your life would be once you had it. Your brain released a chemical called dopamine, the molecule of more. This is the promise of satisfaction. But what happened after you got it? For a few hours, maybe a few days, you felt great. But then, the feeling faded. The phone became just a phone. The shoes got dirty. And suddenly, you found yourself wanting something else. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We are designed to pursue pleasure, but we are not designed to keep it. There is a famous experiment mentioned in the book involving monkeys. Scientists monitored the dopamine levels in a monkey's brain. They would turn on a light, and a few seconds later, give the monkey some sweet juice. At first, The dopamine spiked when the monkey got the juice. Makes sense, right? Pleasure equals dopamine. But as the monkey learned the pattern, something shifted. The dopamine spike moved. It started happening the moment the light turned on, not when the juice arrived. The anticipation of the reward created the high, not the reward itself. And here is the kicker. If the juice never came, the monkey's dopamine levels crashed below baseline, creating a feeling of disappointment and suffering. You are the monkey. The light is the notification on your phone. The light is the match on a dating app. The light is the email from your boss. You are addicted to the chase, not the catch. Natural selection built this mechanism to keep our ancestors hunting and gathering. If they felt permanently satisfied after one meal, they would stop looking for food and starve. Dissatisfaction kept them alive. But today, that survival mechanism is driving us insane. This evolutionary mismatch explains so much of our modern anxiety. In the prehistoric wild, if you heard a rustle in the bushes, you had two choices. You could assume it was the wind, or you could assume it was a tiger. If you assumed it was a tiger and ran away, but it was just the wind, you lost a few calories. No big deal. But if you assumed it was the wind and it was actually a tiger, you were dead. So, natural selection bred us to be paranoid. We are the descendants of the anxious, the warriors, the ones who jumped at every shadow. Today, there are no tigers. But that ancient software is still running. That rustle in the bushes is now an unread email with a vague subject line. It is a weird look from a coworker. It is someone leaving you on red. Your brain treats social rejection or uncertainty with the same biochemical panic as a predator attack. We are living in a hallucination. We project our internal fears onto the external world. There was a fascinating study done at Dartmouth College that proves this. Researchers brought people into a lab and used makeup to paint a horrific, disfiguring scar on their faces. They let the participants look in a mirror to see how bad it looked. Then, the researchers said they needed to do a quick touch-up. In reality, they wiped the scar off completely. The participants went out into a building thinking they still had a hideous scar on their face. When they came back, they reported that everyone had been staring at them. They said people were rude, patronizing, and looking away in disgust. They detailed specific conversations where they felt judged. But here is the truth. There was no scar. Their faces were perfectly normal. The judgment they perceived was entirely a projection of their own mind. They expected to be treated differently, so they interpreted every neutral glance as an insult. This is the matrix we live in. We think we are seeing reality, but we are seeing a story our genes are telling us. We are trapped in a cycle of craving, anxiety, and delusion, driven by a biological imperative that does not care about our peace of mind. So, the question remains, if the blue pill is accepting this biological slavery, what does the red pill look like? How do we hack the code, step off the treadmill, and actually find the peace that nature denied us? It starts with realizing that the voice in your head, the one worrying, wanting, and judging, is not actually you. If you are like most people, you navigate life with a very specific assumption about who you are. You imagine that inside your head, there is a CEO. There is a singular, consistent you sitting behind your eyes, gripping the steering wheel, making logical decisions, and directing the movie of your life. This CEO decides to go to the gym, decides to be kind, and decides to save money. But if there is a CEO in charge, why is he so bad at his job? Think about it. On Sunday night, the you in charge swears that this week will be different. You are going to wake up at 6 a.m., eat a salad for lunch, and finish that project. But when the alarm goes off on Monday morning, a different you hits snooze. At noon, another you orders a burger. By Wednesday, the Sunday night CEO is nowhere to be found, and the company is in chaos. Robert Wright explains that this internal conflict happens because the CEO's self is an illusion. Buddhism calls this anatta, or not self. For centuries, this sounded like mystical nonsense. How can there be no self? I am right here. I am thinking these thoughts. But modern evolutionary psychology has arrived at the exact same conclusion. It turns out, your mind is not a monarchy ruled by a king. It is a parliament of squabbling politicians. Psychologists call this the modular theory of mind. You have a self that wants to be fit and healthy. You also have a self that wants immediate comfort and sugar. You have a self that wants to be productive, and a self that wants to doom scroll on social media. These modules are constantly fighting for control of the microphone. Whichever module screams the loudest in the moment gets to control your actions. And here is the uncomfortable truth. These modules were not programmed to make you happy or consistent. They were programmed by natural selection to solve specific problems your ancestors faced 200,000 years ago. Let us look at two of the biggest drivers of our modern misery: cravings and rage. First, let us talk about that uncontrollable urge to eat junk food. In the modern world, we shame ourselves for having a lack of willpower when we eat a donut. But look at it through the lens of evolution. For 99% of human history, calories were scarce. Sweet, fatty foods were essentially non-existent. If your ancestor stumbled upon a beehive or a fruit tree, the smartest biological strategy was to eat as much as physically possible, right then and there. The gene that said, maybe we should save some for later, did not survive the famine. The gene that said, eat until you are sick, survived. Today, you are walking through a world designed to exploit that ancient software. You are surrounded by hyper-palatable foods, engineered to hit that bliss point. When you see a candy bar, your ancient brain thinks it has won the lottery. It screams, eat this now, or we might die. You are not weak. You are just running Stone Age software in a modern environment. The same logic applies to anger and social status. Have you ever felt a surge of blinding rage because someone cut you off in traffic, or because someone left a rude comment on your post? Logically, you know it does not matter. The stranger in the other car does not know you. The internet troll is irrelevant to your life. So why does your heart race? Why do you spend hours rehearsing arguments in the shower? Because in a small tribal society, your reputation was your life insurance. If you were perceived as weak, or if your status dropped, you might be exiled from the tribe. And in the wild, exile meant death. Therefore, the brain evolved a hair-trigger response to disrespect. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you to fight for your social standing as if your life depended on it. Natural selection does not know that you are safe in your apartment. It does not know that a downvote on Reddit will not kill you. It just sees a threat to your status and hits the panic button. This brings us back to the core message of why Buddhism is true. Our suffering comes from taking these feelings personally. We identify with them. We say, I am angry, or I am hungry, or I am anxious. We assume these feelings are truths about who we are, but they are not truths. They are just data. They are biochemical suggestions sent by a paranoid algorithm that is trying to get you to survive in a world that no longer exists. Robert Wright argues that this is where the Matrix has us trapped. We are slaves to these impulses. We let a craving for sugar dictate our health. We let a flash of anger dictate our relationships. We let a fear of judgment dictate our careers. We think we are making choices, but we are just reacting to the programming of the selfish gene. The author Richard Dawkins famously wrote in The Selfish Gene that we are merely survival machines, robot vehicles, blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes. It is a bleak thought, isn't it? It makes you feel like a puppet. But there is good news. Once you see the strings, you can stop dancing. When you realize that your anger is just a defensive module trying to protect a tribal status that no longer matters, the anger loses its power. When you realize that your craving is just a scarcity module panicking about calories that are actually everywhere, the craving feels less urgent. The self you are trying to protect, build, and satisfy is not real. It is a story. And if it is just a story, that means you have the power to edit it. You do not have to obey every thought that pops into your head. You do not have to believe every emotion that washes over you. But how do we actually do this? How do we step out of the parliament of shouting politicians and find some actual quiet? How do we stop reacting and start living? This is where the practical tools come in. It is not about suppressing your emotions or becoming a robot. It is about a specific type of training, a mental gym routine that allows you to stand on the platform, watch the train of thought arrive, and choose not to get on board. So, here we are. We have established that your brain is not designed for your happiness. It is designed for your survival. We have established that the you running the show is actually a chaotic committee of conflicting impulses, all programmed by natural selection to keep you chasing carrots you will never actually catch. It feels a bit hopeless, doesn't it? If the game is rigged, why play? But this is where Robert Wright's analysis of Buddhism pivots from a depressing diagnosis to a radical cure. This is where we learn how to take the red pill. The ancient solution to this modern problem is something you have heard 1,000,000 times, but probably misunderstood. It is called mindfulness. Now, wait. Before you roll your eyes and imagine someone sitting in a pretzel shape chanting, Om, let's strip away the stereotype. In the context of evolutionary psychology, mindfulness is not about relaxation. It is not about clearing your mind of thoughts. It is actually a rigorous, almost military-grade form of mental rebellion. Mindfulness is the act of stepping out of the simulation. Think back to the monkey and the juice. The monkey suffers because it is a slave to the dopamine spike. It reacts automatically. The light turns on, the craving starts, the monkey acts. Most of us live our entire lives in that loop. We feel anxiety, so we scroll. We feel loneliness, so we text an ex. We feel anger, so we shout. There is zero gap between the stimulus and the response. Meditation is the practice of inserting a wedge into that gap. When you sit down to meditate, you are essentially sitting in a laboratory to observe your own mind. You are watching the modules fire. You might feel an itch on your nose. Your natural instinct, your evolutionary programming says, scratch it. Eliminate the discomfort immediately. But in mindfulness, you do not scratch. You just watch. You say, hello, itch. I see you are there. I see you are unpleasant. You observe the raw data of the sensation without the emotional story attached to it. And a miracle happens. The itch eventually goes away on its own. You realize that the urgency was a lie. The feeling was a suggestion, not a command. This is the superpower. You can apply this to everything. When a wave of anxiety hits you because of a weird email at work, instead of spiraling into a panic attack, you can step back. You can look at the anxiety and say, okay, my heart is beating fast. My chest is tight. My fear module is screaming that I am going to get fired and die alone in a ditch. You acknowledge it. You validate it. But you do not become it. There is a massive difference between saying I am sad and saying I am experiencing a feeling of sadness. The first statement defines you. It traps you in the matrix. The second statement liberates you. It creates distance. It allows you to look at your emotions the way a meteorologist looks at a storm. The storm is happening, it is intense, but it is not you, and it will pass. Robert Wright argues that this is what the Buddha meant by liberation or enlightenment. It is not necessarily some magical state where you float on a cloud. It is the very practical ability to break the chains of natural selection. It is the ability to look at a donut and see the sugar craving without eating it. It is the ability to feel rage without throwing a punch. It is the ability to stop running on the treadmill. We often think that freedom means doing whatever we want. If I want to eat, I eat. If I want to buy, I buy. But that is not freedom. That is slavery to your impulses. True freedom is the ability to choose not to do what your genes are screaming at you to do. This brings us back to the Matrix. Toward the end of the film, Neo begins to see the code behind the reality. He stops running from the agents because he realizes they cannot actually hurt him. He sees them for what they are, just lines of code. That is what this book offers you. It allows you to see the code behind your feelings. It allows you to see that your imposter syndrome is just a tribal safety mechanism. It allows you to see that your boredom is just a biological push to make you productive. Once you see the code, the agents lose their power. Robert Wright is playing the role of Morpheus. He has explained the system. He has shown you the prison of natural selection. He has explained why you are anxious, dissatisfied, and constantly craving more. He has shown you the door. But Morpheus cannot fly the helicopter for you. You have to be the one to walk through the door. You have to be the one to do the work. You have to be the one to sit down, close your eyes, and face the uncomfortable noise in your head until you learn to see through it. So, tonight, you have a choice. You can click on the next video, get another hit of dopamine, and go back to sleep in the pod. You can keep running on the treadmill, hoping that maybe the next purchase or the next achievement will finally make you happy. Or you can stop running. You can take a breath. You can observe the machine instead of being a part of it. The red pill is waiting. If this conversation sparks something in you, if you felt a little glitch in your own matrix today, do me a favor. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, but to let me know you are still awake. And tell me in the comments, what is one glitch or recurring anxiety in your life that you are ready to stop taking personally? Let's talk about it. I will see you in the next one.